in particular to comment on or talk about, so I'll just open it up to questions, and whatever's on your mind, let's talk about Colorado basketball.
Coach, it was announced that Coach Greer was going to be joining the staff. What exactly does he bring to the team, bring to your staff in Colorado?
Well, nothing's official yet, so I can't comment on the coaching position, and we're in the process of filling it. So with no announcements been made, we hopefully will have something before the end of the week. I don't know exactly what the timing will be. So right now that position's still open, and we're in the process of filling it, and don't have any on that front right now today, unfortunately. Sorry.
Coach, we haven't really talked with you, caught up with you since Des Moines post-game. And since then, has maybe anything else come up in reviewing the season and what you feel like this team has to do to get better for next season?
Well, look, that situation in Des Moines was very hard for this year's team to accept. We went to the NCAA tournament expecting to advance, and we didn't. So it's taken some time to kind of just adjust, and right now we're in the process of having year-end meetings. I had a couple yesterday. I'll have a couple more today and tomorrow this week with our players, both the outgoing seniors as well as the players that are returning. And this is a time of year where you do reflect back on the season, and but now it's more about each individual player, what they need to get better at, what they need to work on as we go into next year, how I can help our seniors as they go out, and having those frank, honest discussions with every member of our team in terms of where they stand and as we go forward. From a team standpoint, again, when the season ends, it ends abruptly, and it does that for everybody. But from a team standpoint, as I look at next year's team, I'm excited. We lose 4 good seniors, 2 guys that played a lot. Obviously, our leading scorer, leading rebounder, Josh Scott. But we had 2 really good players sitting out, in Xavier Johnson and Derek White. So we're, I think, going to be able to replace our production that our senior class gave us with those 2 guys, as well as Bryce Peters and Deleon Brown and whoever we end up signing late. What I don't know and what the unknown is how are we going to replace that leadership. And as we look to last year's team as well as this year's team and certainly the next year's team, you guys all know how important leadership is. And so that's going to be the challenge I have to next year's 5 seniors.
Coach, you kind of knew what you were getting in him when you brought him in, but now that you've had Derek in practice for a year, how excited are you for what he's going to bring to this team?
Well, I wish we had him for more than 1 year. Let's put it that way. He's a special player. He's going to be able to affect the game in a lot of different ways. He can score, he can shoot, he can distribute the ball, he can rebound the ball, he can block shots for a guy that's 6'5". Terrific defender. Derek White is going to have a great year next year. There's no question in my mind. And my only wish is we had him for more than 1 year. But we're going to take the year and try to get the most out of it as we can with him as well as the rest of our guys. So he's going to be a terrific addition to this team, and Buff fans are going to really, really enjoy watching him play next year.
Coach, have you had a chance to sit down with Xavier Johnson? Do you know, is it definitive that he's coming back next year?
I did, yeah. XJ and I talked yesterday, had a great conversation. I think he's excited about next year. Yeah, he's got both feet in, and he's going to be a big part of next year's team. We know that he's a proven guy at the Pac-12 level. We know he can score. We know he can rebound. And he's still in the process of rounding back into shape. He's not 100% yet with that Achilles. But, I asked him yesterday when we talked, and he told me he feels like he's 80 to 85%. And then obviously he's got to drop some weight and kind of get back into playing shape. And he's in the process of doing that. And hopefully in the month of April, that's our goal with XJ, is to get him to hopefully 100% and ready to go as we go into the off season.
Ty, when you have that frank discussion with Wes, What does that all entail? What do you hope to see from Wesley over the next 5 or 6
Well,
months?
Wes and I he's one of the players I've yet to sit down and speak with. But, as Wes goes into his 5th year, the challenge that I'm going to give him is obviously Josh is gone, and he's going to have to bring a little bit more to the table. I really want him to step up in his leadership role now that Josh is gone and Xavier Talton are gone. He is a 5th-year senior. He's been here. I thought Wes really showed strides with his consistency this year for the first time, game in and game out. I thought he was a guy we could really count on. But I think it's all about not taking possessions off, being a consistent performer, but now getting out of yourself and out of just, hey, how is Wesley Gordon playing? How is Wesley Gordon helping this team? And looking at it as a leader in terms of how are these other guys going to help us be successful as a team. So Wesley Gordon needs to become more of a outside of himself type player, and this is a great opportunity for him to do that.
Coach, in Colorado basketball history, whenever they've lost a great player, a la Josh Scott, it usually meant a step back for the program if you go back through the history. Can you speak about what it means, the foundation that you've built here, that you're not expecting that step back?
Yeah, and I think, again, our staff's been here 6 years, Neil, and our big challenge, if you remember 6 years ago when I was introduced as the coach at Colorado, I said our goal is to build sustained success here. And here it is 6 years later. We've been to postseason play every single year. We've been to 4 NCAA tournaments, been to the Final Four of the NIT. We're on the brink, I think, of that sustained success. And we've lost some really good players since the time we've been here. We lost Alec Burks and Corey Higgins our first year. We lost Carlin Brown. We lost Austin Default and Nate Tomlinson. We lost Spencer Dinwiddie to the NBA. We lost Andre Roberson to the NBA. We've lost some really good players. Now we're losing Josh Scott. And we've been able to continue on. And that's why I say it's not about replacing the production, because Josh Scott's rebounds and Josh Scott's points, we will be able to replace those. May not be by one guy, but it'll be by a combination of guys stepping their game up. And that's the challenge to our players, is what are you going to do to get better and to produce more next year than you did this year, whether it's George King or Wesley Gordon or Dominique Collier, you name the guy. But we all got to step up. Obviously, having a guy like Xavier Johnson sitting out, who's a proven player, Derek White, who's a very talented guy. The production, we will replace. The leadership that Josh Scott gave this team this year is the biggest concern I have as we move forward. How are we going to replace that? Who are the guys that are going to step into that role? Is it going to be Wesley Gordon? Is it going to be Xavier Johnson? Is it going to be Dominique Collier? Is it going to be Thomas Akiazili, George King? We're going to figure that out over the next 6 to 7 months, and that's the answer that we have to have. So I think we've sustained success. We want to continue to sustain success. We want to move forward and not only just get into the NCAA tournament and play for an NCAA tournament bid. We want to get to the point where we're playing for an NCAA tournament seed. And I look at this year's team. I look at that Utah game at home, the Utah game on the road, the USC game on the road, all those missed opportunities. If we take care of business, instead of being an 8 seed, maybe we're a 6 seed. Maybe we're a 5 seed. And now maybe we're playing into the second weekend of the NCAA tournament and maybe beyond. So that's where this program, in terms of my vision, is going forward. And I think next year's team has all the ingredients to be pretty special.
Coach, Dom Collier at Media Day this past year talked about being a little, I guess louder would be the right word, a little more demonstrative, being a little bit more kind of there on the court. Do you think he made a step this year? Does he still have some work to go to really be that vocal leader down there?
Yeah, Dominique, I think, certainly showed strides this year in terms of getting better. You look at the way he shot the ball, especially from the three-point range relative to his freshman year. Made great strides there. Made some good plays for us at critical times. Made big shots for us at critical times. Dominique, I think, going back, is a lot like where Wesley was at the same point in his career. Now it's got to be about consistent production, not just spot production. And especially at that point guard position, that point guard role, you know, he has got to be able to learn how to finish games, how to take control of the team and make sure that we are, because that was one of our challenges this year, was finishing games in the second half. Look, we came back from a lot of deficits, especially early in the year, and even at times in Pac-12 play, we came back from deficits and won games, but we also had some situations where we had leads and we weren't able to protect them and finish the games, and that really falls on guys like Dominique and Thomas, George, you know, the perimeter players that have the ball in their hands at the end of those games. We got to finish games better than we did next year, and so to me, that's where Dominique, as I look at him, making strides for next year, has got to make some improvement. But I thought he had a good sophomore year. As I look back, I kind of wish we'd have redshirted him as a freshman, but we didn't, and so now is the time for him to make major strides, and he's capable of doing it. There's no question.
Coach, kind of along those lines, the two freshman guards that are coming in, do either of them have the potential to get time at the point as that kind of playmaker and push Dom next season?
Absolutely. I think as I look at our point guard position, you got Dominique Collier, you got Thomas Akiazili, both guys that I think are capable, but you also have Deleon Brown and Bryce Peters coming in, who are both capable guys that can run the point. They're not necessarily true point guards. I would categorize them as combo guys. They can play the point, but they can also get off the ball because they can shoot the ball well enough. Both have good size and length for that position. So, again, it might be a situation that there's some competition for that spot. Dom will be pushed, there's no question. Those guys are capable coming in and pushing him. And what I would say with those two guys, with both Deleon and Bryce coming in, where they have an opportunity to make an impact is defensively. As I've said this during the season, I said this after the season, I'll say it now, this team never had a perimeter defensive stopper all year long. It never emerged. So can it emerge between now and when we take the floor next year? That's the question. And if I'm Deleon Brown or if I'm Bryce Peters, I'm coming in saying I'm going to guard, and I'm going to guard anybody and everybody I can, because if they do that, they'll have a chance to bypass some players in our program in terms of playing time. So that's the challenge. I mean, you look at the UConn game. UConn's three leading scorers were their 1-2s and 3s. We couldn't stop their guard play when we had to stop their guard play, and we weren't able to do that all year long. Our interior defense was not an issue. Our perimeter defense was an issue all year long. So as we go forward, again, I just throw that challenge out to every one of our players.
Ted, maybe you just kind of answered part of this question, but you know, as you watch the NCAA tournament, you see psychologically tough teams moving on, making comebacks, making big plays, that kind of thing. And you guys are always focused from a staff standpoint on working on the entire player. Obviously, you guys are very physically talented players. How do you kind of work on guys becoming mentally tough? What's that process like for you guys?
Well, it's a great question, Mark, and it's one that we've got to find the answer to as we move forward. And I don't think we're a mentally weak team. There's a difference between, you can use the adjective of toughness, and then the antithesis of that is softness. I don't think we're a soft team. I don't think we're necessarily a mentally tough team, as tough as we need to be to advance. And so that is done by, again, I think, challenging our guys. You watch film. They've got to get their skill set to a point where they can handle pressure and can perform under pressure. And so that's going to be a challenge as we move forward. And some of that comes with maturation, just the normal, going from a freshman to a sophomore, going from a sophomore to a junior, and you have that natural progression of developing that as you go. And then some of it comes from the freshmen coming in and pushing and competing, and it happens in practice. It happens in our pickup games. Or it doesn't happen in practice or happen in our pickup games. And that's the challenge that, again, I think every one of our players, especially our perimeter players, when it comes to holding those leads, taking care of the basketball, making good decisions with the basketball, that's where our strides need to come and mental toughness is a part of that.
Ted, this Final Four, these 4 teams, what stands out to you about this group that we have this week?
Well, they're all playing their best basketball at the right time. You know, you look at a team like Syracuse, who's a 10 seed. They lost 5 of their last 6 games leading into the tournament. Their RPI was like 70 in the 70s. There's a lot of people that could argue that they didn't deserve to be in the tournament, but obviously they do because they've advanced. It reminds me of the George Mason team, you know, from a few years ago that barely got in the tournament. They get hot. They're playing they're playing really their best basketball at the right time. And North Carolina obviously is clicking on all cylinders right now. So Oklahoma, you know, has been good all year, but they're really, you have to be playing your best basketball, and you have to get a little bit lucky. The ball's got to bounce your way. I mean, they all didn't get there just by steamrolling their way into the Final Four. You know, they've had some bounces go their way, but they're all playing their best basketball in the month of March, and that's what you want to be able to do.
Well, one of the storylines this weekend too is the idea that there is a program on probation and there's another program that's being investigated. A coach's viewpoint on that. Do coaches feel like the penalties are strict enough? How do you view those situations as someone who has not had any issues with compliance? Is there any frustration with it, I guess?
You know, there is. I mean, there's frustration, and I don't know what goes on in other programs. You know, I have an idea, you know, who's doing things the right way and who's not. There is some frustration. There's no question. I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't. And I just think if you're not running your program the right way, and I'm not casting stones on anybody, but if you get in issues with the NCAA and compliance, I think, you know, and there's a lot of people that will argue against this, but taking postseason play away is the sucker punch that the NCAA has to send a message that that's not acceptable, and suspending a coach or, you know, whatever, it's not effective, you know, in terms of going forward. And that, again, I'm not talking about any program, but in particular, but there are programs that do it the right way, and there's programs that operate in the gray area, and there's programs that cheat. So that's why we have compliance officers at every institution. That's why we have an NCAA enforcement staff, and I think they do a good job, but a lot of moving targets out there when it comes to that. So, yeah, I know how we operate this program, and I'm very proud of that. And I think when you see other programs that maybe live in the gray area, it is frustrating, but that's life.
Coach, this is usually the time of the year where you hear about attrition, if there is any.
Mm-hmm.
Do you expect any coming from your
Very, very well could be. You know, again, that's why these discussions I'm having with our players are frank, they're honest. I'm not holding back any punches. I always say every decision that I make as a head coach, especially starting in September and October and going through March, is strictly with our team's best interests at heart. And sometimes our players have to make sacrifices during those months, and I ask them to be team players and to do what's right for the program. And I'm going to make every decision that's in best interest of the program. You know, now that the season's over with and I have these individual meetings, it's about what is best for that young man. And they all came here because they felt like this was a place for them to further their education and play college basketball. And when it comes to playing time and where they fit in the program, I'm honest with them, where they are today. Now, where they are today is not necessarily where they're going to be tomorrow, but you know, they're aware of the surrounding players around them and what's going forward. They're smart kids, and so they have to make the decisions that are best for them. And I'm going to support them in those decisions. I'm going to help them with those decisions, but the ultimate decision will be the young man. And so if a player ever leaves Colorado, he's going to leave on his terms, not on my terms. And it's it's important that everybody know that. You know, last year we lost Jerron Hopkins and Dustin Thomas. Very frank, honest discussions. Those decisions those kids made to leave were their decisions. If we have attrition this year, it will be because those players made those decisions, not the coach making the decision for them. And that's where, really this time of year, you see it on every college campus with every team, men's players, women's players. It's just part of this time of year. So could there be attrition? There could be.
Coach, you had the team stick around last summer. Do you plan to do that again this upcoming summer?
They're gonna be around here in June, and I will say this: I'm very, very thankful to our administration, Seal Berry, Rick George, Phil DiStefano. They're wonderful people to work for as a coach because they trust us, and when we ask for something, they will do everything they can do to deliver on their part. This year, we're going to go back to our traditional. The players may or may not be here in May for Maymester. Most of them probably not. They need a break at the end of the semester. They'll all be here in June. We'll be running our basketball camps. They'll be in summer school lifting. We'll have a new weight coach that'll be working with them in June. So June's a very, very important month. And then July is kind of up to them. If somebody needs to take a summer class and is going to stick around Boulder, they can, but they don't have to. A lot of them are go home in July and then come back in August ready to go. So we'll go back to our traditional kind of summer program. They're here in June, gone in July, and we're figuring that out as well in terms of summer school and how they finish up academically this spring plays a part in that. So nothing's etched in stone right now, but the plan is to be here in June, and they can do what they need to do in July, be ready to go in August when they come back.
Coach, George King obviously had a breakout season.
Yep.
It seems like there's still a higher ceiling there with him. What's the challenge for him now to keep pushing and obviously keep building on what he did this year?
Well, I think the one thing about George is obviously everybody knows he belongs. He knows he belongs. He did have a breakout year. Really proud of him and what he did. But the exciting part about George as we look forward is the ceiling is much higher than where he is right now. So, the conversations I will have with George, assist turnover ratio, is something he's got to really, really concentrate on and get better at. He can make plays for himself now. Now he's got to be able to make plays for his teammates. And so that's the next step for him, to be a facilitator as well as a scorer. He can really shoot the ball, obviously, getting better off the dribble, finishing at the rim, finishing with contact, finishing in the lane is going to be key as well. So distributing the ball, finishing the ball, become a better rebounder. He's got great size, great length, great strength. There's no reason why he can't be a double-double guy in my mind. So putting an emphasis on rebounding the basketball. Defensively, continue to get better in that area. So George has a lot of areas he can get better at. The one thing we know about George from his redshirt year is he's got great work ethic. And he's going to take whatever challenges we give him, and he's going to work on them. And that's the exciting part about, not only redshirting kids, but having them go through your program, over a multitude of years to see that improvement and what they do from year to year in terms of adding to their game. So he's got some things he's got to work on and get better at. He knows that. He's eager to do it. And then the one thing we know about George, he's going to put the time in the gym to do it.
Ted, you said that earlier that you have a spot still available. When you look to fill that spot on this roster, do you do so out of need, or do you look at the best player available? When you look at the makeup of your roster now, it looks like it's heavy on wings and maybe not so much on bigs.
Yeah, definitely. You recruit based on need. And now there's sometimes that things happen where there's a player that becomes available that's so good that you just Derek White's a good example. We had a chance to get him. You better get him because he's a difference maker, if you will. But as I look at our roster, we do have one scholarship on paper. That's going to be filled with a big. If we have another one come open, it'll be filled with a big. After that, you take the best player you get, depending on what attrition we have, where things fall out over the next 2 to 3 weeks. But we need to add big guys to this roster. And, I think, again, the game of college basketball is changing, much like the NBA is changing, in that, a lot of teams that used to play with 2 bigs are now playing with 4 guards and 1 big. And, and I see us as Xavier Johnson comes back to our program, one of the things I talked about him is, look, we're going to play 4 perimeter players and a big at times, and you're going to be one of those perimeter players, so you got to help us rebound, and you're going to have to guard 4 men, you might have to guard point guards and anybody in between. So your challenge is defensively to be, disciplined enough to be able to do that and work hard enough to be able to do that. So, and he's not the only one. Every one of our other players is, guards are going to have to guard big guys. Dom and Thomas are going to have to get bigger and stronger in the weight room to guard big guys in front of the post. So the way the game is going is more towards 4 guards and a big versus, 3 perimeter players and 2 bigs. And I think we'll have a hybrid kind of team next year in terms of playing both ways.
Based on what you just said about the game changing, so therefore, do you have to change the way you go about holding true to defense and rebounding with a roster that maybe isn't quite like rosters you've had in the past?
Well, it's not going to change our philosophy. It's not going to change our emphasis on defense and rebounding. What it's going to change is your personnel might be a little bit different in terms of getting that done. And you have to recruit guys that understand that and that are willing to do what you're asking them to do. And that means your wings are going to have to become better rebounders. We lose Josh Scott, George King has to become a better rebounder, right? We lose Josh Scott, Trayshawn Fletcher has to become a better rebounder. We lose Josh Scott, Wesley Gordon's got to get a few more extra rebounds a game. So I think our philosophy is not going to change, but I think our players, in terms of what they bring to the table, has to change a little bit in terms of what they're able to do. But we're always going to recruit the best players we can get. I'm not going to sign a big guy just because he's big. If we got a guy that's 7 feet that can't play, and you got a guy that's 6'7" that can play, I'm taking the 6'7" guy that can play, and we'll figure it out. So with that being said, the big guys are harder to get. It's a supply-demand situation, and there's sometimes you have to take a chance on a big guy, and sometimes that works out, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Every program in the country is to that point. And so, I always say with recruiting, it's not a matter of who you want. Who can you get? And that's the thing that gets challenging.
Hey, Ted, I know that a guy like Josh Scott, you were about as fond of him as any player you've ever had, I know, and he's moving on, looking towards that next career. At this point, how much more advice, input, guidance will you give him as he's kind of moving on to a potential pro career?
Mark, every player's different, and some guys ask for more in terms of, Josh is in the process of hiring an agent. He's really asked for my input, asked for my advice. I'm giving it to him. The decision's going to be his, and that's a decision for him and his family. Spencer, really asked for a lot of input and guidance. Andre, not so much. Alec, a little bit. So every player's different when it comes to that. I'm here for them. My job as their coach doesn't stop when their playing days are over with. I'm going to hopefully be a guy who can help Josh for the rest of his life, as long as I'm around. And same with any other player that's played for us. So, but Josh and I have a great relationship. I think he values my thoughts and my opinions. I certainly valued his while he's here, and I still do. And so I'll give him any kind of help he needs as he goes through the transition of being a college player to being a pro. And he'll be a great pro because he's a pretty mature guy.
We'll go with these last 2 questions here. Maybe time for a little bit of one-on-one after George King's also here for anybody that wants a little one-on-one with him. And we'll go with these last 2 for now for this session.
Coach, when you look over at the women's program, head coach Lavi out, head coach J.R. Payne in, I noticed that you were at the press conference yesterday. Do you have any early impressions of her? Have you talked to her at all yet?
I did get a chance to visit with her briefly. Not a lot. She's obviously hitting the ground running, and I'm excited for her. Anytime there's a coaching change, as a fellow coach, it's bittersweet. I had a lot of respect for Linda and her staff, and you hate to see things not work out. But it certainly, as I look at JR and her, I think Rick George said it best. Her personality, her energy level. What I got from her is, and what I really respect is, she's taken over 2 programs that have been down. And some people talk about their record and that maybe being a negative thing. I don't look at it that way. I look at JR taking over Southern Utah when it's down, a losing program, and building into a winner. Then I look at her taking over Santa Clara, being down and turning it into a winner. So I look at that as a positive thing, not necessarily a negative thing. And the fact that she's now has an opportunity to be at a Pac-12 school and has all the resources that a place at the University of Colorado can give her and her staff, I'm excited for her. And, you know, I watch the women's program. You know, we overlap with our practices, and I see how hard they work, and they deserve success, and I think she's a great hire. I mean, from all indications in terms of my short time getting to know her. There's another person that I'm close to that knows her well and has worked with her in the past, and he said nothing but great things about her. So I'm excited.
Just real quick on Tory Miller's
Yes.
progression this year, and where do you see him fitting in next year?
Yeah, I think, you know, I've always said this, you know, as you know, but I think the biggest improvement usually in college basketball comes from the summer between your freshman and sophomore year. And I look at Josh Scott and what he did. You look at George King, and I know he redshirted, but look at the improvement he made. Tory Miller, his improvement from his freshman year to his sophomore year was terrific. And he really became a guy down the stretch that we wanted to get him the ball in the low post. And his freshman year, you know, went down there, it's like, okay, hope he doesn't turn it over, you know. Let's play inside out. Let's kick it back out. You know, I wasn't too confident in Tory in operations on the low post. But now, as his sophomore year progressed, I mean, he was a guy, let's get him the ball. Let's get him touches. And so, and he delivered. So I think if Tory can continue on that progression of improvement, and you saw his low post game really improve, now he can improve on his perimeter jump shot. That's something I think that he needs to really look at as he goes forward. But Tory Miller, again, much like George, great work ethic. You look what he did to his body. He went from 255 to 238, became more explosive, ran the floor better, became a better defender. He made great strides and great progress. And that's one of the things we pride ourselves on in this program is development of players. And I think it starts with the player. We got these nice practice gyms. We got this nice weight room. We got sports nutritionists. We got weight coaches. That's all well and good. Everybody's got those things. But what do the players do to transform their bodies, transform their games in the off season? And that's the challenge every one of our players has. And if Tory just continues on this path he's on, he's going to be a much better player as a junior than he was as a sophomore. And that's exciting because he brings as much energy and enthusiasm to the table as any player we have. And I love the kid. I mean, you talk about, you know, my affinity for Josh Scott. I got the same kind of affinity for a lot of our players, but Tory's certainly one of them because he works so hard. He wants to do well, and he's going to be a terrific player. And we're going to need him to be because, again, with Josh leaving, we know what Wes can bring. We've talked about the challenges he has going forward into his 5th year. Tory's going to be asked to do more next year as well in terms of rebounding and scoring the ball and hopefully making some jump shots for us.
Okay, thanks, Coach.
Thank you.